The Prefontaine Classic is stacked. We have so many incredible matchups going into it. Melissa Jefferson-Wooden versus Sha'Carri Richardson versus Julian Alfred. Kenny Bednarek versus Letsile Tobogo. On the distance side, Athing Mo versus Kelly Hodgkinson versus Mary Mora. Faith Kipyegon will be coming fresh off her sub-4 mile attempt and facing the likes of Welteji, Hunter Bell, Jess Hull. Olympic champion Beatrice Chibet will be facing the world record holder Gudaf Tsegai, 20-year-old prodigy Medina Issa, and many others in an epic 5,000 meter race. But of course, the race that I am most excited for is the Bowerman Mile, where we have the likes of Hocker, Yared Nuguse, Azzedine Habz, Hobbs Kessler, Grant Fisher, Niels Laros, Cameron Myers, Timothy Chariot, Jake Whiteman, Stefan Nielsen, the list goes on. And if we're really lucky, we might get to see the return of one Jakob Ingebrigtsen to the track season. So it's time to break down all the matchups, preview all the athletes, and see who is most likely to win the Bowerman Mile. Now I'm going to start off with the Norwegian athlete in this race, because the fact of the matter is that he is the X factor if he is able to compete. Of course, he has been recovering from the same Achilles injury that bothered him last season, so it is looking pretty unlikely that he's going to compete. He did recently post on his Instagram that he is almost back to full training, but that was only a week or two ago. I find it hard to believe that he's going to throw himself into a super fast mile race, even if he is actually capable of running. And on top of that, although we know that Jakob can bounce back from injury pretty well, in fact the last year's Bowerman Mile he was recovering from an injury and still placed second behind Josh Kerr, the time frame between his injury recovery and this Bowerman Mile is a little shorter than last time. If he does line up to the race, I honestly don't see him winning. I think the field is so stacked that it's a very tall order for anything but a prime Jakob to have a good chance of victory, and I also don't imagine that he would be going into this race with the intention of winning, more just seeing where his fitness is at and getting some of the rust off. So although I would very much like to see Jakob compete, I don't think it's going to happen, and even if he did, I don't see him actually winning the race. With this in mind, I think there are three other competitors who are the favourites to win this Bowerman Mile. They are Hocker, Yared Nuguse, and Azzedine Habz. Those are the main guys to watch out for, at least in my book. Hocker is a little bit of an unknown though. Since Grand Slam track, he competed in the Stockholm Diamond League where Andreas Almgren ran a new European record. But the Olympic champion looked quite leggy pretty early on and finished a disappointing 8th place with a time of 13:09. And therefore the million-dollar question is this indicative that Hocker's form and fitness just isn't where it needs to be right now and he's still waiting to ride the end of that peak? Or is it that this 5,000 meter pace was a bit of a shock to his system and he just had an isolated bad race? We all know Hocker peaks quite hard for the right moment, and we're not quite yet at the stage where we would expect him to be hitting that peak. He's also spoken in interviews about struggling with balancing the Grand Slam track 800 meter speed work in his training, along with trying to build up his strength in the 3,000 and 5,000 meters. He actually spoke and said that he wanted to do the long distance category in Grand Slam, but wasn't allowed to. On the other hand though, whilst he hasn't won any of the Grand Slams, he has been slowly building momentum. And as I've commented on before, I feel like it's been more his poor positioning that's led him down, rather than his actual fitness. And of course in the Philly Slam, he was as closest yet to victory, going neck and neck with Josh Kerr before being out-dipped at the line. Yared Nuguse is kind of in a similar situation, although we have seen him looking pretty consistently strong in the Grand Slam series, oftentimes being second or third place in the 1500 meters. He did look his worst yet in the Philly Slam. Whilst he did impress in the 800 meters coming third place, beating the likes of Hobbs Kessler to do so, he unfortunately didn't look as strong in the 1500 meter, placing 6th. I do think that is a bit more of an isolated race though, as Nuguse tends to be quite consistent in his season and was looking good up to this point. But again, it's that whole B+ narrative with Nuguse. He's not giving me anything to think that he's going to break out and beat such a high caliber field. I think he'll do well, and we know a prime Nuguse is one of the fittest athletes in the world. In the 2023 Bowerman Mile, he went neck and neck with Jakob Ingebrigtsen, running one of the fastest mile times in history. This could be the Goose's opportunity to stamp his authority on the 1500 meter, but I just don't see it happening until it happens, if that makes any sense. That said, Nuguse's strength and strong finishing capabilities makes me think he's always a contender, so I'm going to discuss him later on. Now speaking of breakout performances, let's talk about Azzedine Habz, who would have been a bit of a footnote in this video if he hadn't run a 3:27.49 in the last Paris Diamond League. And as crazy it is to think, if Jakob doesn't line up on the start line, Habz will be the person with the most recent and fastest personal best of the entire field. Like, I still can't wrap my head around that. Again, it is very difficult to assess whether this was just a one-off performance or indicative that Habz is now a mainstay contender amongst the top 1500 guys. But as I mentioned in my previous video, his Paris run was done in almost perfect conditions. It's also possible that he has hit his peak for now and won't be in great shape for this race. But then again, it's also very possible that he's riding that peak form from 2 weeks ago and is still able to perform in the Bowerman Mile. And I feel like he's backing himself to ride that peak still, because it seems strange that an athlete who's trying to rest and reset for Tokyo would be throwing himself into such a difficult race. Given it's so soon after the performance as well, you would expect him to at least be in 3:28 shape. I would be quite surprised if he runs a 3:27 time again, but at the same time, who knows? We saw the runner-up and newly crowned under 20 world record holder Faneuil Coach returning on Strava with a 3:29 low victory over the likes of Asa Knada and Cameron Myers. So it figures that the guy who beat him can run just as quick or faster amongst a more stacked field. And therefore I think Habz is a genuine dark horse to win this race. Maybe not even a dark horse at this point. Out of these three, it will be interesting to see who takes the front. Habz is known to take out things aggressively even in non-paced races. You can see him in the World Champs final in Budapest sticking right at the front, even though he placed 11th in the end. Nuguse also has shown front running chops in USA's and Grand Slam track, as has Hocker. Now I think it's possible that Nuguse sticks to the front if he's trying to chase a really fast time and just Jakob the entire field, but if I'm being completely honest, I don't think that's the approach he's going to go with. Because Nuguse isn't a dedicated front runner. He'll take the lead if he thinks he has the advantage here, but I think he realizes that Hocker and Habz are going to be more than willing to push the pace. And therefore, why is he going to spend extra energy fighting for the front when he can just sit behind one of those two? For Hocker as well, whilst he is best known for his strong kick, he has been known to take the lead and push the pace, especially more recently in the Grand Slam track races. I feel it's not worked out too well for him when he's done it, and I find this tactic by him interesting, given you would expect Hocker to do super well in a tactical race, and therefore pushing the pace from the front seems a little counterintuitive for that, but despite this, it's very possible that the man takes the pacing duties. Another front runner in the field is former world champion Timothy Cheruiyot. Although he was the man to beat back in his prime a few years ago, he is a little bit over the hill now. I mean, of course, he's still cranking out 329 times here and there, but the crazy thing about the 1500 these days is that that's not really that impressive anymore. I don't really see him leading this race at all, to be honest. It just doesn't make any sense for him, and I don't think he would have the fitness to keep it up anyway, but thought I'd give it a mention nonetheless. Quite frankly, this is a race where there are so many unknowns going into it that it seems almost impossible to really pick a winner, but we're gonna do it anyway. So between Habz, Hocker and Nuguse, who do I see winning it? Well, in terms of how the race will play out, I see Habz being the most likely to take the front. Hocker and Nuguse kind of periodically take the front when they feel the race calls for it, but Habz is always up there no matter what. The race will be paced and he's got strong fitness at the moment, so I reckon he'll be backing himself to try and run a fast time. That said, we have seen how acting as pacemaker for the likes of Hocker does not end well, and whilst Habz will back his fitness a lot, I find it hard to believe he can just Jakob the entire field. I think if he wants the best chance of victory, he should employ the tactic he tried in the Rabat Diamond League, which was take the lead and then run at a pace that, whilst is pretty fast, is not so quick as to tire a top athlete out very much. You want to strike that awkward pace that is too fast for someone to overtake you comfortably, but too slow that maintaining the pace at the front for the majority of the race doesn't tire you out too much. He did this right from the gun in Rabat and ignored the pacemakers going off around a 330 pace, and whilst he did maintain the lead for the majority of the race, he began to tire fairly early on and was overtaking in the last 50. I am sure he will follow the paces this time in such a prestigious event like this, where the fast times will be an expectation, and I think there will also be a part of him that wants to prove that Paris was not a fluke, and of course as an athlete you naturally want to chase a fast time anyway. But unless the guy's running another 327, I don't see him being able to just front run to victory. So instead of making it a battle at the strength where no one really has an advantage and the person who leads is likely going to get kicked on, I think Habz, and to be honest a lot of the runners here, should make it a battle of positioning, where you as an athlete take the pole position and try and fend everyone off, not running slow exactly, but not running super fast either. Let's say Habz drafts behind the paces for the first 2 laps around a 3:47 mile pace. He then runs a slightly slower third lap after the paces drop out, and in the last lap starts to crank up the pace a little bit more. Because something that has been slept on in his Paris race is that his final lap was a 53.9. This is faster than Kerr's last lap and equal to Nuguse's last lap in the Olympic final. So Habz has incredible strength, but he can also press well with 400 to go. The only person to my knowledge who has run a race under 3:30 with a faster closing time than him was Hocker, who ran a 53.55 in the last 400 in the Olympic final, whilst getting his stride checked, I might add. But that was a prime Hocker who also got lucky with a gap opening on the inside. If Habz keeps that close, Hocker might struggle to overtake him even if he is in that prime form, which we've already established is quite unlikely. So if Habz can fend off anyone trying to overtake him and maintain that pole position going into the last 400 with a little bit of energy left from a slightly slower race, I think he'll be in a really strong position to take that victory. And this will work for Habz especially, as he is that dedicated front runner and maintaining that lead is key to this tactic. It's not that Habz has unmatched closing speed, it's that his closing speed is strong enough to make him difficult to overtake. But that all goes out the window if he's in second place. I also think that if Jakob does decide to race, this is also his best tactic. He might have the advantage in the world champs once he builds back his fitness again of just being able to front run to victory. I see it as unlikely, but it's always there. But because his fitness won't be in strong shape, he can't rely on making it a strength battle. And whilst Jakob's final 50 might not be anything special, he does have a really fast 400. Now I said that predictions for such a speculative race are useless, but we ball anyway. I am going to go with Azzedine and Habz winning the Bowerman mile. This could blow up on my face if he's just super leggy from Paris and hasn't recovered at all, but you know, then I can hide behind me just saying, oh, it's all speculative anyway. The reason I go with Habz is obviously a bit of recency bias. He is one of the fittest athletes in the field right now from what we've seen, but I also think he's going to take the initiative more because of his front running style. It is very possible though that he tries to sit behind Hocker and Nuguse. We'll have to see. But I think if we're picking between those three, there are just too many questions around Hocker's current form to make him a solid pick. And Nuguse again needs that breakout performance before I really feel he's going to be confident to win. That said, if Habz does not win, then I would pick Nuguse, as he is always in the mix and usually turns up to this stuff in good shape. However, of course, once Pre-Classic does start, it won't be Pride Month anymore. So he'll lose that 10% boost that a lot of the LGBT runners have been benefiting from. Now, just because those three guys are the main contenders in my book, there are still plenty of names that we shouldn't count out. Hobbs Kessler is of course someone that people are always going to be looking out for. He ran a 3:29.9 Paris at age 22 and is looking in solid form. He's also got decent finishing speed from his 800 meter. We saw him most recently compete in the Grand Slam Philly Series where he put in a solid shift. Yes, he may not have won either race or blown anyone away with his performances, but he was racing against a top caliber field. He also mentioned in the post-race interviews that he doesn't tend to be someone who's in good fitness at that point in the season. I do think we'll kind of see a similar performance from him again. I think he'll always be up there in the mix. He likes to stick in that sort of 3rd or 4th position spot. And it's kind of similar to Nuguse. I imagine he'll do pretty well, but I don't see him winning it. Apparently he subscribes to the channel, which is pretty cool as well. So if you're watching Kessler, good luck in the race. I'd be very up for doing an interview if you're available. Another young prodigy that people will be looking out for is Australia's Cameron Myers, the 19-year-old phenom from Australia who recently ran his first sub 330 race in the Ostrava Golden Spike Continental Tour. And given how consistent he's been looking this season so far, I think he could be a genuine contender for a medal position. Maybe even take the win. It would definitely be a big upset if he did claim gold, but with such a stacked field, I can imagine him getting a decent personal best in this race, and on top of that, if people aren't paying a huge amount of attention to him with the big names in this race, he could slip on the inside and pull a real upset here. He also looks strong in the Oslo Diamond League Dream Mile, which is a bit of a weird name by the way, someone could let me know the context of that, where he was able to steal a 2nd place behind Portugal's Isaac Nada. And then we've got the wild card in this race, Grant Fisher, the 5k and 10k Olympic bronze medalist and current American record holder in the 5k. He has been looking pretty solid in the Grand Slam series, although he did scratch from the most recent one in Philadelphia. Apparently it was due to injury concerns. He said that whilst he was warming up, he was getting a little twinge in his hamstring. It didn't sound super serious, but you kind of wonder how his training has been the last month or so. It is a bit of a surprise to see him in this race, but I agree with most people that I think the intention is to get some practice for his kick against Jakob Ingebrigtsen in the 5,000 meter World Championships. It's going to be a sit and kickers race, that's just how the 5k is run these days, and he needs to practice that speed, which I think is a big part of why he signed up to Grand Slam track in the first place. Of course, if Jakob is competing, we don't really expect them to be much of a duel there, because Jakob is much better at this event than Fisher is. But it still gives him that physical practice and kind of the mental simulation of lining up against the Norwegian and seeing how he runs. Based on his indoor season where he ran a 3:33.99, I wouldn't expect him to do fantastic in this race, but then again with the way the 1500's been going these days, maybe he just rips out a 3:45 mile. I mean, he has been looking fantastic this season, so I wouldn't put it past him as well. But who do you think will win the Bowerman mile? Let me know in the comments below and let's get a discussion going. If you want to see a video breaking down Habz's performance in the Paris Diamond League and considering the doping accusations levied against him, then click on this video here. Alternatively, here is a video YouTube recommends you watch, and I think you should listen to that recommendation. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy training.